Welcome, everyone, to RB1 Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Fake Teams Podcast channel. I am the consummate professional, presenter of the DeAndre Swift gift for those with a Swift lift up the fantasy gift list, first ranking officer of the Terry McLaurin Stan Club, and BFFs with the Oracle, your humble host, Pete Rogers, and I am joined by only one guy, but it's the same guy. It's the Duck Father, governor and overseer of Derrick Henry Rage Manor, DK Metcalf's number one admirer, and caster of the double reverse chutzpah, resident old man Clark Barnes. Clark, it is back to the olden days of the RB1 podcast when it was just you and me with regularity.
It's nice to be regular.
It's I often, when I am not regular, I there are ways to address it and make sure that things are moving smoothly. How are you?
Doing great. A little insulted that you called me a governor in this the election season. I feel slimy now. Thanks, but other than that, pretty good.
Good. Well, I think it's safe to say that Tuesday didn't go like anyone had planned or wanted. Clark, not a single sexy name was traded at the NFL deadline.
Yeah, it's tragic.
What we got instead was the Patriots adding Isaiah Ford and the Dolphins trading DeAndre Washington because I guess Myles Gaskin is now injured. So that was the excitement of the NFL deadline.
Yeah, Quan Alexander was that a couple of days ago.
Oh yeah,
traded to the Niners. Yeah, so defense. Who cares about defense?
Yeah, for all you IDP people, man, can you imagine?
Of which I'm falling backwards into third place in my only IDP league. So that's always.
I can't even imagine having to add more positions than I need to worry about in fantasy. As it is, I have gotten rid of in my home league that I'm commissioner of, gotten rid of defense and kicker just to limit the number of positions I need to worry about. Now we have defense. We brought defense back. We did just kicker last year. This year we're just doing defense.
We need to have an off-season discussion on this, but the in vogueness of crapping all over kickers because it's so random. Hey guys, I gotta let you in on a little secret. This whole thing is incredibly random. The best people are right 55% of the time. That's random, guys. So have some fun with it.
Yeah. Kickers, I like defenses more than kickers. But
yeah, I'm not going to die on the hill, but it's fun. And the argument against it is stupid because
the argument against it is dumb.
Yeah, dude. So is everything else.
That argument is dumb. That I agree with that. All right. Well, let's get into week 9 starts and sits. We're going to make our way through all the games, and we'll start with Thursday Night Football, which might not even be Thursday Night Football, considering both these teams have had positive COVID tests this week. But nonetheless.
Oh, I thought there might be fires in each city, so they didn't know where they were going to have the game.
I mean, that also is probably – who knows? This game, which sucks because Green Bay Packers heading to San Francisco to play the 49ers. I mean, on paper, if everyone's healthy, this is a great matchup, but unfortunately it's not. The COVID test for the 49ers, just so those who know, Kendrick Bourne was the one who tested positive for COVID, so he is out, the wide receiver, and they cut Dante Pettis, which means basically it's Brandon Ayuk or bust in that receiving group, which is always great to see, especially for good old, what's his name, who's going to be taking over? Not Jimmy G, but I can picture him.
Not Beth Hart, Chris Mullen.
There it is.
The former basketball player. It's something like that.
It's something Mullins. Anyways, for me, the Packers don't have a running back also because Jamal Williams also has COVID. And Aaron Jones might be back?
Aaron Jones might be back. Question mark.
Don't forget about Alan Lazard, everyone, because he's supposed to come off IR this week. And if he's been practicing, and if he's ready to play, he's going to be a big boost to this Packers passing game.
Yeah, my notes here are pretty simple. Whoever is playing running back for the Packers, still questionable because the Niners' run defense is actually pretty good, and why not just throw it on them instead? And then whoever is playing running back for the 49ers, you absolutely want to put in your lineup, even if you're just guessing. I'm guessing against Tevin Coleman.
Yeah.
And just putting it on the line with Hasty. So that's what I'm going with. But that's just purely based on Tevin Coleman's track record for several years.
Yeah, I like the Jermichael Hasty too. That's who I have in my notes as you have to start a running back in this game for the 49ers because not only do we just love the 49ers ground game with Kyle Shanahan, but also the Green Bay Packers are giving up the most points to running backs this year in fantasy. So we just saw Dalvin Cook torch them for 4 touchdowns. And Kyle Shanahan has something schemed up for Jermichael Hasty to score 5 touchdowns on the Packers this week. So if this game is played on Thursday night, you got to make sure Hasty or any possible 49ers running back is in your starting lineup. Basically, I would just say Hasty or Jerick McKinnon. I don't have faith in Tevin Coleman.
That's all they have left, right?
I think so.
Then maybe for the Packers, maybe Big Bob Tanyan, maybe, if you have to.
If you have to. I like that. All right, well, let's move on to the Sunday games. Denver Broncos heading to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. I'm calling this as my Jerry Jeudy breakout game. He had 10 targets last week. Yeah, baby. 10 targets last week, which shows that he's becoming a more vital part of this offense. And the Falcons are giving up the most yards to wide receivers per target. So if he sees another high target load this week, he's going to be in for a big game. And I think he pieces together, 80-plus yards and a touchdown and announces his entrance into the NFL realm of viable starting wide receiver twos.
Yeah, so football guys, writer, and Denver Bronco aficionado Cecil Lammey said there's a lot of turmoil going on in the Denver Broncos organization. Pat Shurmur's offense is too complicated for Drew Lock. It looked like a coach got punched at halftime because he came out with like broken glasses and like taped up nose
job. What is going on in Denver?
You know when the nerd gets hit in the movie, that's what it looks like afterwards. And apparently one of the possible outcomes of that fight is everyone saying your complicated offense isn't working. Drew Luck is not smart enough at the moment to do it. So why don't we just tell him where to throw the ball, a la Jared Goff? And that's why Jerry Jeudy got like 10 targets last week. So hopefully if that's what's happening, that is great for Jeudy, because if you just had to pick who was going to be open at the beginning of every play, Jerry Jeudy, probably a pretty good option most of the time. My only other note here is free Philip Lindsay. Like, God, they just want him to not be a thing so bad, and he's just so good.
Yeah, it is a testament to how good Philip Lindsay is when Melvin Gordon, like in his revenge game, quote unquote, against the Chargers last week, Philip Lindsay still was a much better performer. Like Gordon couldn't even get up for that. So let's give this backfield entirely over to Philip Lindsay. And actually, faketeams.com, not only are we a podcast, we also write articles. Head over there because we do have an article talking about 5 running backs a la Philip Lindsay, who are guys trapped in running back committees that if they were to get the full load, they would suddenly become league winners, just like Raheem Mostert was last year for you. So Philip Lindsay is certainly one of those guys. All right, let's move on then to the Seattle Seahawks heading to Buffalo to take on the Bills. What do you got for this game?
Well, I'm finding where I got my order for games is very different from where you got your order for games.
Clark spinning.
So nothing special for this game. Just fire them up. We're going to be watching to see who the running back is for the Seahawks, and we're going to play them. Whether it's Carlos Hyde, whether it's Travis Homer, whether it's the other guy whose name is escaping me. Definitely want
DJ Dallas, which sounds like an amazing DJ name. Like when people were saying it,
a made-up name in football.
It does. When people were saying it on Twitter, I was just like, no. Wait, there's like a DJ who is like this, like a music guy who's playing running back for the Seahawks now. But DJ Dallas.
Anyone I'm considering playing on either team, I'm firing up. Like on to John Brown. Not to diss John Brown or anything, but I just don't see how both Buffalo running backs don't have a pretty good game. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, do we even need to mention that you start the number 1 and number 3 wide receiver in all football? Just everybody is a go in this one.
Yeah. I'm a little hesitant on Devin Singletary. I would actually say I would say bench him. The Seahawks are allowing the 3rd fewest rushing yards, and we've talked about a lot this week, especially on Tuesday's show, the Zach Moss effect, and that was on full display Sunday, where once they got into the red zone, Zach Moss took over that backfield. And Singletary, where the Seahawks have been vulnerable in running backs, has been through the passing game, which Singletary hasn't really been involved in. Zach Moss has been more involved in that. But if you I don't think that if you can't get out from under Singletary, then you can still fire him up, but I would try to find a matchup that I like better than Singletary. I am playing Zach Moss with confidence this week. Devin Singletary, I would not be. All right. We're going to Baltimore to Indiana. Ravens taking on the Colts. And I mean, God damn it. I want this Ravens offense to be, especially this passing game, to be better. Better Ravens passing game, but it's not. And for that reason, I am benching Marquise Brown this week. I can't just let him sit in my starting lineup and get me a big fat 0. He saw 2 targets last week and is going up against Colts defense, allowed the 6th fewest 20-plus pass yard plays, which is, of course, the only way Marquise Brown is going to get a big play or any kind of fantasy production is Lamar Jackson heaving the ball down to the field to him because, for whatever reason, John Harbaugh hasn't decided that Jim Harbaugh? John. Michigan is on my mind, unsurprisingly, and so I am mixing up the Harbaughs. John Harbaugh won't get the ball to Marquise Brown in intermediate routes. It's either 50 yards down the field or nada. So he's sitting on my bench this week, even if it's just a reminder to Marquise Brown that, in order to be a starter on my fantasy team, you actually got to put up numbers. Got to earn it.
Yeah, it's a battle of strength against strength for both of these teams. The Colts are 30th in points given up to running backs, so 30th is good. That means 3rd best. And the Ravens are 27th. Meanwhile, both of these teams want nothing more than to just run the ball over and over and over again. The Ravens do that a bit uniquely. The Colts do it because Phillip Rivers has shown that the Chargers were right in letting them go. So it's just going to be interesting this week. I think the Ravens will adapt better to not being able to do what they want to because Lamar Jackson is actually young and can still sort of pass. And I think the Colts secondary is a little bit more suspect than the Ravens secondary. I like that you have Marquise Brown on your bench this week because you just want to send a message. I have this as a Marquise Brown breakout game for no reason whatsoever, even other than it just has to happen sometime. I know that's not good analysis.
I'm here for those positive vibes you're sending out into the world, Clark, because
he made some noise last week. So the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I don't know. I can make up any.
No, this narrative. This is a narrative you ride. You are on the squeaky wheel gets the grease narrative, and I'm here for it. You've been on it for all season, and for the most part, you are right. When a player, sounds off his frustration, teams tend to get the ball to that player, especially if it's a wide receiver. So you might have something there that Marquise Brown might see a viable fantasy production this week.
Yeah, and I think Jordan Wilkins probably edges out carries in the ground game again, just because I don't think Jonathan Taylor is healthy. And so I think that they're going to stay away from him. But I think Nyheim Hines probably scores the most points of any of the running backs. So just an absolutely maddening week for all your Colts.
I agree with that ranking of hierarchy in the Colts backfield. All right, let's move on.
Sorry, one last thing. Since we are talking running backs, Gus Edwards over J.K. Dobbins, but not necessarily because of who I like skill-wise more. I just feel like Gus Edwards is going to have the lead with J.K. Dobbins in the background.
Second that notion. Clark, a game that I'm sure you were very excited for, Houston Texans taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. And to add, I don't know, whipped cream to your ice cream sundae, you didn't have Bill O'Brien, GM as the Houston Texans, who certainly would have traded Will Fuller away to the Packers at the deadline. Will Fuller's still on the team. You can take solace in that.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, not a whole lot of gripping analysis in this one. Just anyone who you're on the fence with, probably want them to go in this game. They already had a good shootout last time they met, and that was under the oppressive thumb of one Bill O'Brien. I mean, I think this is going to be a decent game for David Johnson. I think Keelan Cole is going to be worth playing. DJ Chark comes back to us in this game again, predicting it just because I want it to happen.
That's what I like to hear.
He's had some kind of minor nagging injuries, like his back, chest, ankle that he always seemed to try to play through. So one story you could tell yourself is that after the bye week with these minor injuries, he's going to be better. Or we'll see this week. If he's not better after this week, you really got to start thinking about keeping him on your bench and just not playing him until you hear he's totally better. For the Texans, good luck. I mean, Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, Jordan Akins should be back this week. So if you're desperate at tight end, check him out. Super athletic. Usually he and David Fells just cannibalize one another. And so the tight end position is good for the Texans, but it's tough when they both play. But I'm taking a shot on Akins in one league just because he's so athletic. And I just don't see how this game isn't like 35-32.
Yeah. And the Jaguars are starting Jake Luton at quarterback this week since Gardner Minshew is recovering from a thumb injury, hand injury.
Multiple broken bones in his throwing hand.
Jesus. Well, that's not good. Let's hope that heals well. But I think that lends credence to your DJ Chark take, where I could see them kind of funneling targets to DJ Chark as the number one pass catcher in that offense. So I totally agree with you. I am here for the DJ Chark like reminder game that actually he is a viable, wide receiver 2 with regularity in fantasy, which I would love to see. Also, this game could if the Texans get out to a super early start and they're up big, then we love garbage time. Garbage time stats are still fantasy stats, and there's nothing wrong with that. All right, let's move on to the Carolina Panthers heading to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. The only thing I have for this game is I am not benching it by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm certainly tempering my thoughts on Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. I think that actually DJ Moore I might give DJ Moore the slight advantage just because we've seen now him become a little more reliable in these intermediate routes and just his target share has gone up. I think this could be a game where I see two ways that this game's playing out and both of them giving us different reactions into Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore's usage. If this is at all kind of a close-ish game, then I think that the Panthers passing attack is going to kind of still struggle. But if the Chiefs get out huge and then they just kind of, take their foot off the gas and you have half of the third quarter and a full fourth quarter of Teddy Bridgewater just chucking the ball around trying to get back, they're down 20 and the Chiefs defense is kind of like, nah, whatever. Who cares if we give up a big play to Robbie Anderson? That is obviously great for his fantasy value. But I have them both ranked, I think, as like middle tier wide receiver 2s this week, as opposed to, I think if Robbie Anderson, I would comfortably put him back as a top tier wide receiver 2 if it was a different matchup.
Yeah, I like Anderson and Moore just for what you mentioned there at the end. I don't expect this to be a very close game. Not that it will all be all garbage time, but Tyrann Mathieu in the middle of the field, I think, is scarier than Robbie Anderson or DJ Moore. Sorry, Tyrann Mathieu in the middle of the field, taking away the easy over the middle stuff that Curtis Samuel has been getting lately, I think is less scary than, Robbie Anderson over the top. So I think Robbie Anderson over the top, even DJ Moore over the top, good possibility this week. I agree with everything you said here. Fire up your Chiefs. The only problem is if it doesn't get interesting for them, we might see some lame sauce, but we may actually get to see what the Chiefs want to do at running back. It's been kind of a tough transition for Bell so far. Not a tough transition. It's just been one game, so we don't really know yet. And then just don't drop Mike Davis yet. I know that Christian McCaffrey is supposed to be back, but just you never want to wish injury on someone, but I'm holding on for just one more week just to make sure that Christian McCaffrey is all okay.
And it could also, Mike Davis is balled out, and it could be something that, Christian McCaffrey, they put so much of the offensive responsibility on his shoulders that they might want, Mike Davis still might have a role even with McCaffrey back where they kind of try to balance the workload a tiny bit.
Maybe. I would give
Clark is
Christian
certain that once
McCaffrey,
McCaffrey's back, he's getting 50 touches a game.
I would give him touches until he fell over. Because Mike Davis did okay, but he's not.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to crap on Mike Davis. Christian McCaffrey's much better.
If Christian McCaffrey does play and is healthy, what a game to come back to, because we know the Chiefs just will part the Red Sea for you, literally, because they wear red. And say,
rising tides lift all boats. So Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore having a bit of a slack season here is really good for them that Christian McCaffrey's coming back.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, yeah. Basically fire everyone in this game. Let's move on to a game in which I was really excited about firing up a bunch of people, especially one team's offense. And then some news broke, and I said, ooh, fade everyone. Detroit Lions heading to Minneapolis to take on the Vikings. And Matt Stafford is on the COVID injured reserve list. So he will not play this week, which means we're getting I don't know. Chase Daniels, I think, is the backup quarterback for the Lions. So while I was very hyped on Marvin Jones this week coming in to replace an injured Kenny Golladay, Minneapolis allowing the most receiving touchdowns to wide receivers. Jones coming off a 2-touchdown game last week. I had him as a firm wide receiver 2. And now fade all of Detroit's passing game. I don't trust that, but I do like DeAndre Swift, who's seen a ton of work in the passing game. I like that to continue, especially against the Vikings, and especially with, Chase Daniels under center, who's probably going to be checking the ball down a fair amount.
Hold on. Stats and information is looking something up.
It is Chase Daniel. And Chase Daniel, if I'm not getting my quarterbacks crossed, set NCAA records for passing at the University of Houston. His problem has always been a little bit too much of the bad, Ryan Fitzpatrick with not enough of the good. So Chase Daniel still could chuck it. But, he is still playing for Matt Patricia and the Lions. So that's probably not going to be the game plan. Most of my notes on this have drastically changed now that I have found out that Matthew Stafford is out. I had things like, I'd still put Adam Thielen in the top 15 this week. I think Jefferson is definitely a top 30-ish wide receiver. Dalvin Cook's not going to possibly have 500 yards and 9 touchdowns again. Well, all of that seems not right, because if I'm the Vikings, I just want to run against a, relatively pedestrian Lions defense. And if I only have to beat Chase Daniel,
it becomes a lot. I totally agree with you, though, with the Vikings passing game bouncing back. I have Adam Thielen as my wide receiver 10 this week, and where do I have Justin Jefferson? Wide receiver 17. So
that's good. I mean, I know they had a bad week, but
yeah, I would be confidently firing both those guys up again and expecting them to still get you solid fantasy production. Going to cut in here for a second and take us to a quick ad break. Let's move on to the Chicago Bears heading to Tennessee to take on the Titans. Clark, what do you like in this game, or don't like?
So I think with the Vikings, or not the Vikings, with the Titans, you're just kind of frustrated at the tight end situation. Jonnu Smith looks so good at the beginning of the year and then has fallen off. I think you're okay with A.J. Brown, obviously Derrick Henry, and Corey Davis. I'm happy with all three of those. For the Bears, I mean, Montgomery is getting enough volume and Robinson is getting enough volume, and this Titans defense is not prolific. So I'm going to go with those two. I mean, not much interest in this game, real NFL wise. I think if you're thinking about starting the stars here, no problem. I know Chicago's defense is tough, but the Titans offense seems like largely impermeable to that, or impervious to that. So I'm going to start my Titans with confidence, and I'm going to start my Bears because that's where I drafted them, and I feel like I have.
Yeah. I saw someone rank, I've seen in Fantasy Pros expert rankings, I saw Allen Robinson sitting all the way. Actually, let's load it up so that I can give you exact numbers and we can mock them together. Experts, my absolute bottom, when they say that in half-point PPR, right now, Allen Robinson, wide receiver 13. Get the fuck out of town. Wide receiver 13, Allen Robinson, I have him as my wide receiver 6. Allen Robinson, I will believe in to my dying days, and he goes up against a Titans secondary that has been picked upon relentlessly this year. I don't know why anyone would consider Allen Robinson anything other than a wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season. So fire him up with 100% confidence. You are all idiots. Fantasy Pros, expert rankers. Come at me. Come at us. I don't care. I'll take you on. All right. Afternoon games. New York Giants heading to Washington to take on the Washington football team. I'm going to fade the Giants passing game. What's his name? Who is that quarterback there? Daniel Jones has not looked good. And I know Sterling Shepard has been back, and that has offered some, excitement. He and Darius Slayton have been kind of more heavily involved. But Washington, man, this secondary still fewest points allowed to wide receivers this season in fantasy. And they are like legit. It's mostly due to this pass rush and just like the pressure that they can put on quarterbacks. And Daniel Jones just doesn't, I'm not having faith in him. He has looked like he has regressed big time from like the flashes we saw back last year. So, I'm going to put my faith in a different passing game. If I have to play someone, I think I would go with Darius Slayton over anyone else, just because of the fact he saw a high target load against the Buccaneers and is also their big play go-to guy threat. They're looking for him down the field. Daniel Jones just can't throw a deep ball to save his life recently. So I'm not putting a ton of faith in it.
Yeah, not super interesting here. I think Sterling Shepard would be the play I would go with, just because of the volume and the shorter stuff being, I think, more attainable when the pass rush and secondary are formative. But I'm not going to die on the hill and say you should start Sterling Shepard. I mean, I think Antonio Gibson and Terry McLaurin are kind of no-brainers for the Washington football team, but otherwise, like, both these teams suck. I have no interest in this.
Gotta love the NFC East, where somehow both these teams, despite are like 2-6, have a chance to make the playoffs because that division is just hot garbage. Yeah, I forgot completely too that Kyle Allen is still the quarterback for the Washington football team. That's what happens when you're on a bye, and it's amazing how much a bye just completely makes you forget about a team. I had no memory of that. Let's move on. Las Vegas Raiders heading to LA to take on the Chargers. And good news for all you Justin Jackson managers out there, because he reclaimed the backfield last week with 20 touches for 143 total yards after kind of getting a second wheel before their bye to Joshua Kelly. The Raiders allowing fifth most points to running back. So I think I'm personally confidently firing up Justin Jackson again this week as the primary back for this Chargers backfield. What are you vibing with this game, Clark?
Yeah, I think Jackson will be back and has taken the lead back in this backfield. So we'll see how long he can stay healthy. That's been a bit of a bugaboo for him lately. There are some folks on this podcast who took shots on guys like Nelson Aguilar last week and were very disappointed in the Raiders passing game. That was an anomaly, I think, because of weather. I don't think that we'll see such a low passing total from Las Vegas again this year. So if you're looking back at what happened last week as a predictor for this week and getting a little nervous, I wouldn't worry about it. I don't think Jacob should have, 57 carries or whatever it was that he had. But also I think old Ruggs and Aguilar should be just fine.
Yeah, I second that notion exactly. I've got really high on the Nelson Aguilar train last week, and then obviously the 700-mile-an-hour winds in Cleveland thwarted any attempt at throwing the ball. But I like him again this week, and I would like to see some Henry Ruggs action, some reliable Henry Ruggs action. I don't know when that's going to come, but maybe it's this week, maybe it's down the line. But let's get me 6 to 8 targets and 5+ catches, and we'll see where the yardage is. But let's start targeting him a little bit more. All right. Miami Dolphins heading to Arizona to take on the Cardinals. Anything stick out to you in this game particularly?
No, you're just trying to pick between Preston Williams and Devontae Parker, and there's good luck. Preston Williams got more targets last week, and Devontae Parker got a pretty poorly thrown touchdown. I mean, I think I would go with Preston Williams if I just had to choose because I like him more. He seems a little bit more dynamic, but zero surprised if it's going to be Parker. I'm trying to be wishy-washy here. Really, the matchup is between Tua, who looked not especially great in his first outing, but it's his first outing in the NFL, versus Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. Really exciting thing is Chase Edmonds getting the full workload here, probably for Arizona. If you have some roster spots that are kind of dead, go out and pick up, Benjamin, because he's their rookie who's now one injury away. And if you've got a dead spot on your roster, go pick up a backup running back, because sometimes you hit and save all your fab. For the Dolphins, I mean, I should expect Gaskin to have a pretty big game, and, we'll see.
Gaskin is out. Yes.
Well,
Myles Gaskin is injured, and Matt Breida is also dealing with an injury. So we
Jordan
might see
Howard
DeAndre
season?
Washington having just learned the playbook.
DeAndre Washington. Okay, well, you can see who's deleted their Twitter account because it's election season.
Hey, I commend you on that. Twitter has been
great,
the bane of my existence.
by
I'm
the way.
sure. I bet you it just feels so much better.
They put a 0 next to your guy on game day if he's not going to play.
So you get all the news you need, basically.
Yeah, you got it anyways. I like the Preston Williams call. I think even if you're debating between which Dolphins, had to remember what team it was, Dolphins receiver to pick, I agree with you that it's kind of indecisive, especially this early into Tua's career. But if you have Preston Williams on your team and you're wondering about starting him, I do like playing him. We did see he got 5 targets. He was second on the team in targets behind Myles Gaskin last week against the Rams. And, he is that kind of – he's a big body slot guy who works across the middle, which is, that's where rookie quarterbacks tend to look more so than down the field with Devontae Parker. So I do like Preston Williams. And we were super high on him after he was broke out last season and then tore his ACL. So he might be coming back. And that is something that we should all take confidence in and watch to see. All right, 3 games left. Pittsburgh Steelers heading to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. And oh my goodness, Clark. Dalton is on the COVID list. Ben DiNucci sucked against the Eagles, sanked my fantasy team. Thank you for that. Started him over Cam Newton. He's on the bench now. They are benching, which means either Garrett Gilbert or Cooper Rush will be starting versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, which has me feeling 2 things. 1, don't start your Cowboys receivers this week. 2, why the fuck didn't you go trade for Ryan Fitzmagic at the deadline? God damn it. Clearly, Jerry Jones is tanking for Trevor. But, this game is going to be a blowout fast.
Yeah, my only note for this one, even before I knew Dalton was on the COVID list, was the only fear we have for Steelers players is that they'll only play a half. So, yep. Probably Ezekiel Elliott's low water mark, despite his 6-point game earlier, 6-point PPR game. So I don't know how you get away from him, but
if you can,
you should.
Yeah. I know that this offense has been the Steelers offense, that is, has been very explosive. They're playing the Dallas Cowboys, which don't have a defense. And it's going to be a hot button topic as to which of these wide receivers do you play with confidence. And to help us with that, the Oracle has weighed in onto which Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver you need to start in this week's Oracle's Start of the Week.
With my pick for this week, Juju Smith-Schuster. I sense that he has quick reflexes and automatic instincts that will serve him well.
So there you go. Juju Smith-Schuster will be the top receiver for the Steelers this week against the Dallas Cowboys. I like it.
Set it in stone. The only hope that the Cowboys have here is that Mike Tomlin's done a tremendous job over his tenure by getting his team to play down to his competition. Even though this would be a feat even for him, he might be able to pull it off.
Screw the fact that he's the winningest black coach in NFL history, or I think that's what happened this week. The feather in his cap would be playing down to this Cowboys and making this a game. Well done, Mike Tomlin. Something to truly be proud of. Sunday Night Football. New Orleans Saints heading to Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers, and there's a lot to talk about in this game. But Clark, to me, the two big narratives: Michael Thomas possibly back. What are we going to expect from him? And are we seeing Antonio Brown this week? And what are we expecting from him?
Yeah, I think if Thomas plays, he's an immediate insert into your lineup, just the way that they've been seemingly being cautious with him. But who knows? Maybe he's just super duper hurt and they're going to throw him in there to be a distraction. I'm going to go with if he plays, I think he's going to play like the old Michael Thomas, maybe a little rest, but they should be featuring him. With Antonio Brown, no idea. Just, I don't know how you can have one. He's very good, and Tom Brady is an okay quarterback. So maybe. I don't know.
You should note, the world should note that Antonio Brown, and I'm bringing up stats and information, is bringing this up to me right as we speak. If I go to, I want game logs, actually. Game logs 2019. The one game he played with the New England Patriots last year, despite having absolutely no practice time with them, he was targeted 8 times, caught 4 balls for 56 yards and a touchdown. And Tom Brady is pushing hard, has been pushing hard for Antonio Brown, who finally got his way. Would it surprise me if Antonio Brown takes the field and sees 5 targets for 20 yards and a TD? Not at all. Would it surprise me if he does absolutely nothing? The thing that's 100% going to happen, Clark, you know what's going to happen? This is what's going to happen. The New Orleans Saints secondary is a secondary that you can pick upon, that wide receivers have had great games against. I, for one, am all back on the board of Mike Evans is going to return wide receiver 1 status. He's going to take full advantage of this secondary, and it's going to be a terrific watch. 100% what's going to happen now is Antonio Brown's going to come in, be Brady's number one wide receiver, see 15 targets, catch 10 of them for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Mike Evans is going to not see a single target. So let's all get excited for that.
That would be exciting.
Last game of the week, NFL was so close to a perfect primetime sweep with Packers, 49ers, Buccaneers, Saints, and then Monday Night Football. Patriots heading to New Jersey to take on the Jets. Yes, I said New Jersey because that is where they play, you plebes. I have Cam Newton as a QB1 this week. I think that, the Jets are super bad, and we saw a lot of the old Cam, or what we saw before he had COVID, and the second half of that Bills game. And the Bills defense is obviously better than the Jets defense. Everything's better than the Jets defense. So I am not going to make the mistake this week, I would say, of starting Ben DiNucci over Cam Newton in any of my fantasy leagues.
Yeah, just zero interest in this game. I'm happy to start Jacoby Myers because the Patriots do need a get-right game. So if they have the opportunity to absolutely spank the Jets, I'm sure that they would love to do that. Like you said, Cam looked good again last week despite the loss, and despite the loss coming on absolutely heartbreaking play for Cam personally.
Yeah,
he looked pretty good. And I think the Patriots roll here. The Jets are
trash.
Not good, to be bold.
They're gonna win, Trevor. If you were like, where is the best landing spot in your mind for Sam Darnold? Because clearly the regression has hit, or just he is just not, things aren't clicking for him in New York. And there was so much hype about him coming into the draft, and he seems like there's been flashes where he has the arm strength and the throw. He throws off does incredible plays, can make things happen. But clearly Adam Gase, as he does with anyone who has mild talent, just completely shits on that. Do you feel like, because if they take Trevor Lawrence, they're not going to hold on to Sam Darnold. Is there a spot that you feel like makes sense for a Sam Darnold landing spot?
Yeah, I think Sam Darnold's really good. I think if you watch him play,
it's the fear of what you hope didn't happen to Joe Burrow, or what you hope doesn't happen to Joe Burrow. A guy's got movement. He throw the ball well. And when you just give him like a tiny bit of time and someone else on the team to help him a little bit, he looks really good. So I don't know how you wouldn't take Trevor Lawrence as the number one pick, but I also don't know how someone doesn't give you at least a second for the 5th-year option for Sam Darnold, or is he in his 4th year? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it might be 5th-year option, or maybe 4th year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sam Darnold's still pretty good, and I could be totally wrong. I thought Josh Rosen was okay too. So
hey, jury's still out on there, despite the fact that he's been in the year 5 years or whatever. It would be, what I am 100% here for is the Bill Belichick trades a 5th-round pick for Sam Darnold and then resurrects his career. I'm here for it. It'll never happen, but sign me up for that. At the very least.
I mean, if you had to bet on who's going to be next in the Adam Gase, using Adam Gase to fertilize their career,
moving to a new team, that's not a good phrase. Doesn't Sam Darnold just seem like the kind of person who would be like, oh, he was good?
Oh, Sam Darnold is going to go to a different team and immediately be a top 15 quarterback. 100%. It's without fail. That's what's going to happen. If the Jets lose every single game this year or win one game, if they have the top overall draft pick, I cannot fathom a world in which you keep Adam Gase and give him another young stud quarterback to just completely ruin. That is just I am not an NFL GM, and that's just the dumbest thing you could possibly do.
I felt like I said a good number at the over-under for week 9 for Adam Gase. I didn't know that 2 coaches would be fired before that.
But that's not a bad. If he gets absolutely blown out Monday Night Football.
So maybe. I love the narrative street in football, and I heard someone say the owner or GM came out and said, Adam Gase is finishing this year. And then the person was like, well, yeah, because if you're going to lose all your games, you don't want that just fired your coach bump game where everybody plays their ass off. No, you want to sink this ship to the ground. And I thought that was really interesting. So maybe he will coach all year.
That's true. That's not a bad take. Also, what are you going to do? Like have Greg Williams as your interim head coach? That's
he'd win 4 games and ruin
exactly. You'd completely tank your tank for Trevor by suddenly making this team viable.
For some reason, at least at first, the Greg Williams act seems to get a lot of respect from
It's
players.
great.
He seems to quickly wear himself out also.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a bump.
There is certainly a bump, and it would be one that the New York Giants would be remiss to have. All right, well, there you go. Week 9 starts and sits. Make sure to subscribe to the Fake Teams podcast wherever you get your podcast. iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. That is how you'll not only get us, but also our fantasy baseball and fantasy basketball podcast. If you have any more starts and sits questions, specific ones, who should you play, who should you sit, tweet them at us at RB1 Podcast. We'll be happy to give you some advice. You can also follow me on Twitter at Pete M. Rogers and follow Clark at NFL Clark. And we will be back at you next week to not only talk football and recap Week 9, but maybe talk about some world stuff.
Probably football.
Probably just football, though. Let's be honest. Until then, peace!